attempt 6,666 of how to make a viral exercise video, right? So this exercise video is right for you if you want to get in shape. So this principle scales. We're going to do it a little bit, but if you understand what we're doing here in this video, you could do it a lot bit. And that would be like going real fast or spinning a lot. So pick a spot where you are, do the hand. So if you want to develop your hand, you want the hand to be totally relaxed, and you're actually sending So I want to run the being into the hand, and I also simultaneously want to run the hand into the being, right? There's two things here. There's you, and then there's everything else. And so you're just sort of swimming in that. So if you have a problem area, right, like with the body, chances are you're not getting a lot of movement in that area, likely. And so movement is like this, it's like where you are, your being, and then like everything else. And so the only way to comprehend that is like as it moves through space. And so as it moves through space, you'll notice that your hand is sort of dragging the feeling awareness around with it. And you'll notice that the same thing's happening of like you're dragging your hand around. The exact same way that your feeling awareness could be like here, and then when you move there, it's here. Conceptually, that's kind of like the bones, right? And so as it runs into itself, as it runs into consciousness, right? So it's a movement pattern with consciousness. What is consciousness? It's this. It's that feeling of your being dragging through awareness. And so where you have that feeling of the being, like it kind of feels like sailing or surfing or pressing into awareness when you're doing it. Right? So my being is pressing into everything else, but you could call that like the awareness, like what is your being looking into? And so that's kind of a sailing feeling. Like you generate lift. Like the lift is awareness. And so you can drag your being into different depths, I guess, different depths of awareness in a way, because like you'll feel your awareness as a field. So like if there's any like weird body stuff, pain or inner activation, there's you would go to the bone, the most solid part of being. Like the bone's not going to change no matter what you do. And it's you. So that's like a good area to hone in. Right? So let's say that you're, I don't know, you wanted to target an area. So it doesn't matter your flexibility level really, because it's about your it's not, this is the fastest way to enhance this, but it's not about this. It's about the interaction between this, the resting being, the bones, nearly identical in everybody, interacting with infinity, nearly identical with everybody, kind of a fluid. So you can figure out ways to like press or sail or interact of the being with the environment, right? So something as simple as squatting changes the environment down there, it intensifies it. So if you get used to going into intense areas, I don't know, you usually get more robust, I guess, I don't know. This whole notion of exercise is like insane, right? This is total like rehab, retard stuff. So you can practice swimming with any particular individual part. And no matter how stiff an area is, you can still get it to be interacting with the fluid consciously. Of just feeling and being aware and being present generates lift. So it's like that's your floating skill, is just meditation would be floating. And that's lift that's naturally present in awareness. Awareness that's naturally present in awareness. Which you could, that's another level. That's a word for balance, right? Meditation is just balance, just center way, middle way, right? So it's the foundational skill. Like standing up is the foundational skill to walking. So balance is like something. But then when you move, right? Like I can just be balancing, but if I move through it, it just brings the awareness there like pretty intensely, way more intense than I could do just floating. It's just more intense somehow. So the body responds, adapts, the intensity does something. So there's something necessary about everything, right? Very, whatever. And so you can even do like the skull, like your picture of reality is surrounded by your skull, right? And you'll find that if you shift your focus from like whatever particular movement pattern you wanting to be doing to like what's generating lift, like what movement of my being through awareness is generating more awareness, and you'll find that there's different things you can do the same way there's different stuff you can do in water. Like you can flail about like spastically, or just with a slight shift of whatever, you can start to feel the game and suddenly get like a feel for what increases or what generates consciousness, just how to constantly be surfing. Right? Like that's a major tier separation in society. Like, so the people that are the influencers, the people that are leaders, the gurus and stuff like that, they are like walking down the street at a level of intensity that's considered like a spiritual experience for the lower class. And that's like the difference between, I'm sure there's multiple levels, like that's, yeah. Yeah, so it's just like what movement pattern can generate the most lift, and a big part of that movement pattern is the mental focus. But it's also like, how are you relaxing into the structure? How's the effort doing? So that everything kind of synergistically starts stacking like a kite surfer or something. So you have particular forces like pulling the entire system so that you have more awareness, like you get stoked. Right, so as you feel, or essentially like the fastest way to dial into a lucid state of body being is to realize you're in water. You're in water. I'm thirsty. And so if you want to get into like shape, you kind of drag through that at a particular depth where you feel that you're in that all the time. And then that should just be kind of like normal. And you'll find that, like, as we were describing your being is moving through your awareness. And so you can feel that when you're not moving, but then as your being moves through awareness, like you'll find that awareness has different densities to it. It's like distributed in a particular way. As you stand here, your awareness isn't necessarily even in terms of like where it is or what form or shape it takes. Right? Like it's the shape of this room, obviously, visually, but if you'll feel out with your being, your awareness it goes out kind of horizontally, and it's related to your posture, so it's at a particular level, and you'll find that it moves and things disturb it. And it's like very fluidic. So in terms of like even movement, like how a dance is going to take place, or how like a fight or a sporting sequence happens, it's both of your awarenesses are distributed similarly, and you interact with it in a similar way, like as your being moves through those bodies of water. Or a distribution pattern that's very, very similar to water. And if you pop up out of your awareness, you'll find that you get like heavy and awkward, and it's difficult the same way as like something coming up out of the water. But if you drop into your awareness or drop into your being, the movement patterns start to look like very fluid, and it's kind of identical to being underwater in terms of your balance. And so that's cool. I didn't discover that until late in life. So I'm like perpetually like unbalanced. But if you're a youngin', you can inflate in all directions. Oh my gosh. And so as you move around, you can get more awareness to like run into your body, particular movements, but then also you can just chill out and feel all the big things happening. So if you're in the ocean and you like stop and you like drop down and really listen, and you can feel much more things going on than you can when you're like, maybe you're swimming really well. Like let's say you're doing a race or something like that and you're doing awesome and you're the best swimmer ever. You're gonna kind of be in tune with the waves, but like only in that immediate vicinity where you are. If you like stop and relax, your field of scope can drastically expand. It's just like that. So like this thing where it's like running into awareness. Oh, I'm running into awareness harder. Oh, I'm like generating lift. Like when you run into awareness the right way with your being, it generates lift. Like you actually get high. So that's why people like doing particular sports or particular repetitive motions where they, or like flow state stuff, like where you're running, where your being is running or dragging through awareness in such a way that you're generating lift. You're generating extra choice, extra consciousness, extra self-awareness, right? Like being and awareness, like self-awareness from how you're running into reality, right? Like could be that's surfing, right? Like when you surf, that's just doing that's happening in a tremendous way. This sort of qigong. That's why people get addicted to surfing. Like surfing is the lowest level, easiest qigong. In terms of like, it's a complete qigong. And it's like obvious you can go take lessons from anybody. The stupidest people in the world can be like an enlightened surfing master. And they legit have the same like wisdom. So it's just anything that runs into awareness, which is any aspect of reality. So that's going to be your body, your feeling of your body, like anything external to you. Anything external to you as you move through it is that being running through awareness. Right? So as you move, it causes vortices and eddies and ripples. So it's like I'm not like this is not a movement practice per se. It's just like it has. I guess you can demonstrate that it works by doing like movement tricks, right? Like it's kind of the same thing as doing like a. So you can listen from particular areas that are weak. Like I don't listen very much from my like feet or legs naturally. You tend to listen from areas that are like awesome and areas that suck, and areas that are kind of like neutral, you don't pay attention to, you don't really listen from. So you listen from the whole body because the listening is part of the awareness. Right? Like mindfulness is part of everything external to you, right? So it's like as you drag through it, all of that's there. And then if you do the floating, like all of the same lift that you were getting from moving is there, because nobody's ever like lifting very high out of the water in a stable situation except for like insane technology that not everyone can afford. For the most part, like biological creatures, the best you can do is like get to the top of the water. So you're never going to surf much more intensely than you're going to float. And in some situations, if it gets very intense, you can learn how to catch waves, or at very least, like, reliably not drown no matter what's happening, right? That's actually skill in any sort of extreme sport or any sort of extreme circumstance. What's going on with that person is they've learned to swim. Their awareness is like going chaotic in this particular way that we would call like a fight or a sport or something crazy. Their awareness is able to swim no matter what. And that's mind-blowing if you can't swim, but it's actually just an arena of awareness that if you were to step into it with the right mindset, you can learn how to swim, which is just, it's not 10,000 moves or anything, you just sort of do it naturally. The same way, like, how do you not drown? Like, what's the technique for not drowning? What's the technique for catching a wave? There's something about fresh squeezed orange juice. Oh yeah, so you would float. Anyway, this should get you in shape, especially if you do it with the intensity of an exercise. Like whatever exercise anybody's doing that works, like it's like you have to do things at that intensity. You kind of have to do some stuff to move through the body deeply. Like it has to be, you have to try. So really get into the body deeply. You have to try. But if you're willing to try and apply these principles of being, moving through awareness, right? Of like moving through some dense awareness with squats or running or like whatever actual focus, no phone thing. You know, like if I wanted to build up my tummy, you're swimming. And see, like even like this is kind of a meditative technique, but from like a fitness standpoint, like it works. I don't do anything besides this, right? So it's like it. And I'm not even that good at moving. Like this is sort of a generalized like awareness technique. I'm roughly this good at everything. So just trying to press this whole area. It's hard for me to really want to focus in on any one area because everything's kind of like talking. So it's like, why not capitalize that on that? But I can still try and focus in. I do need to focus in. And I'm not trying to do a wave necessarily. I'm trying to just generate that lift by moving, by swimming. I'm trying to make sure each vertebrae is floating. And by floating, I mean generating lift. So I want to be doing motions that help my vertebrae float, especially the target ones. Like if you have an injury or if you're fat or like if it's just not working, you're going to want to get in that area and do motions that are intense, but that like increase the floating. And so effort is going to let you do more intense motions that increase float. So still, I am targeting kind of my lumbar. In terms of like, I'm focusing on if my lumbar is correct or not, and not so much like I could switch and be like, okay, let's make sure that my shins and my feet are generating lift. Like what's the most What's the most intense lift that my And when you systematically go through and you ask those questions of like, okay, how do I increase the lift on my feet? You'll find that the movement patterns and the intensities that you have to work at, they'll look like training methods from various sports. Like especially the warm-ups and stuff. Because whether you understand it or not, this is how you warm up, this is how you get high, is that you run into reality in a way that increases your awareness. So that's what a warm-up is. And so it's more or less absolutely vital to do this in the morning a lot, especially if you're not in shape. Because once you increase your awareness, or once you get high, like a little bit of the sweat up, or you've done, systematic, focused Qi Gong, to where you're going through every bone, and then around that bone, or with that being, you're doing movements that make you more aware. The same way that a sail or something generates lift, it generates something more. So you could go through and systematically get each part of your body to feel more than it would naturally without the warm-up. And then that increases your consciousness for like the whole day. But it's above baseline, so it puts you in a particular direction, and you'll start to be more and more warmed up like all the time. And then once you get to a particular area, like if you pay attention to what's going on, you don't have to be obsessive about exercise. It can be just something kind of goofy fun. But also, you can definitely very much start to understand the different sports and the different dances, and really capitalize or maximize on a group activity. Like, no joke, if somebody's leading you through the thing, and you understand this sort of Qigong, like, you'll get like 20-fold results. And so you can kind of train at an intensity where you're like doing it with so much energy and effort that it like changes you, which usually requires like busting a sweat or like that, focus, like doing it right. And then there's technique work, which is stuff like this, or just anytime that you're thinking or talking about it. So I'm trying to generate more lift along my back, my spine. So there's always like I don't know, a temptation to want to like start trying to change the structure as you notice like it's not generating lift or it doesn't have like awareness. But I think ideally you want to focus on actually just running it into awareness as good as possible, which will do range of motion stuff, but it's a little bit different than like forgetting about the awareness and the stretch and the structure. And so if a person like naturally learns how to float, like you can be centered in your awareness in like sort of a non-drownable way. You can just figure that out. And other people can be like never learn how to swim in their own being, and that's different tiers of intelligence and athleticism. So a lot of people just figure this out, and so when they figure this out, like I was saying, like any instructor that you go to is going to be awesome. Like if you understand this, no matter who you learn from, it's going to be a great class. I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, like here I want to keep it where it's like I'm running, I am generating lift, where it's like participating in the motion, and then versus like trying to push and grind away at my limits, like my physical limits. And once you get strong, it starts to become tempting to want to grind away at your physical limits, but I don't think you improve that way. And so little tricks where you apply like strong energy to the body, like heat or cold or gravity or movement, acceleration or whatever, those naturally cause like a surfing or an increase in awareness. So that's why people feel a benefit from like saunas or massage or hydrotherapy or like breath work, so you're having like, you know, rapid shifts of the metabolism. All that causes kind of a surfing of like of being moves through awareness in such a way that it runs into itself and increases more of itself. It's identical to how you can feel water. Like if you just put your hand in water, you can just feel water, or if you move, you feel more water. And then in extreme situations, that water field can turn into swimming or surfing or bodyboarding or body surfing. Yeah, body surfing, kite surfing, whatever. There's so many ants.